are resumed. Our second panel today will examine Division 36, which amends the Canada Student Financial Assistance Act, and Division 44, which amends the National School Food Program Act. Joining us in person today for this panel, we welcome from Employment and Social Development Canada, Jonathan Wallace, Director General, Canada Student Financial Assistance Program, Jacqueline Thorne, Director General, National School Food Program, and Misha Celentano, Manager, National School Food Program. Thank you all for joining us today. For your opening statements, you will have 5 minutes, followed by questions from committee members. I'm going to start with Ms. Thorne. Ms. Thorne, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jacqueline Thorne, and I'm the Director General of the National School Food Program at Employment and Social Development Canada. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. Je vous remercie de me donner l'occasion de...
Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the bill to permanently introduce the National School Food Program.
Immediate and long-term benefits for children and their families that can save families with 2 children in school around $800 per year. Jusqu'à l'année dernière, le Canada était le seul...
Until last year, Canada was the only G7 country without a nationwide school food program.
The program was announced in Budget 2024 with an investment of $1 billion over 5 years to support provinces, territories, and Indigenous partners to enhance and expand access to school food programs across Canada. The program is delivered by 3 federal departments: Employment Social Development Canada, Indigenous Services Canada, and Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada. As of March 2025, the Government of Canada has signed bilateral agreements with all provinces and territories on the program, and is also working with Indigenous partners on the rollout of distinctions-based funding for First Nations on reserve, as well as First Nations, Inuit, and Métis Modern Treaty and Self-Government Agreement holders. Le programme vise à fournir des repas nutritifs après de...
The program intends to provide nutritive meals to more than 400,000 children each year with access in schools.
Introduce legislation and provide $216.6 million per year starting in 2029-30 to make the program permanent. The National School Food Program Act will set out the Government of Canada's long-term vision for the program, guided by the National School Food Policy. It will also cement the government's commitment to maintain long-term funding for the program and to continue working with provinces, territories, and Indigenous partners to implement the program across Canada. With that, I conclude my opening remarks, and I'm happy to take questions from the committee. Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. My first question is to Ms. Thorne regarding the National School Food Program. And as you said, in Budget 2025, the government's committed $1 billion from 2025 to 2029, and then $216.6 million annually starting in 2029. Does the program have parameters around what percentage of the total program budget is allocated to food costs versus the percentage allocated to program administration costs to ensure that the majority of the budget goes towards food? And then, given that many schools don't have kitchen facilities, how will the government address this infrastructure deficit so that all children will be able to benefit from the program?
Thank you for the question. In the bilateral agreements with the provinces and territories, there's broad flexibility for them to spend school food programming dollars based on their needs and priorities in their jurisdictions. These can include, just like you said, food. It can include, for example, equipment, food preparation areas, kitchens. It includes logistics, travel to get food to a particular location. It also includes expanding programming into remote areas, for example. So they pretty much have the flexibility to be able to spend on what it is that they need. There is no specific breakdown for budget on food.
Are there any parameters within the program that would align with the food guide in terms of the food that's produced to ensure that it is fresh and healthy?
Yes, actually. The National School Food Program is guided by the National School Food Policy. And one of those principles is around inclusivity, so it's inclusive of cultures, as well as engaging the broader community and students on food. It is also health promoting in that is consistent with recommendations made in Canada's Food Guide as well.
And then can you comment on how many schools don't have kitchen facilities? So that is covered, this infrastructure deficit?
Yes, exactly. So for schools that don't have, for example, fridges to store yogurt and milk, or they don't have equipment like toasters or griddles to make pancakes or what have you, they are allowed to allocate a portion of their funding towards those costs. Same thing, they are allowed to renovate kitchens. They can also construct like prep areas, for example, if they don't have that in their current environment.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator McPhedran. Senator Hay, followed by Senator McPhedran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for your work, and I applaud this. And I want to focus on the National School Food Program and moving it to permanent. And I believe you've spoken to this, so this might just simply be a repeat, but I think it's important enough. The consultation on this appears quite good. Maybe just speak to that a little bit, because being a national program, and one might worry about equity and rural and urban and remote, and even in urban environments, that does not mean that there isn't, it's equitable. So I would love to hear about the consultation in there, and you did address the flexibility in here for communities to deploy as need be for infrastructure and food. But maybe talk about how you're going to really address equity in high-need areas.
Sure. So as you mentioned, Senator, in 2022 and 2023, around the issue of consultation, there was broad consultation undertaken with Canadians, provinces and territories, Indigenous partners, which showed a strong support for a national school food program, after which Budget 2024 announced $1 billion for a 5-year program. In January of this year and February, we undertook an online consultation with a diverse group of respondents, almost 300 of them, to look at views on school food data and research, including areas that we could prioritize for the future. Both of those reports are available online if the committee wishes to have a look at those. Engagement is key, obviously, to strong evidence-based programming, including with the National School Food Program. We also have established relationships with the Breakfast Club of Canada and the Coalition for Healthy School Food, which are key partners for ESDC. Part of the bilateral agreements that we have with provinces and territories and in the action plans that they must provide to the federal government includes a section on collaboration and engagement with official language minority communities and with Indigenous partners as well. What else can I add to that? Yeah, I think that's kind of it for now. I had one more thing, but it escapes me. If I think about it, I'll add it.
Thank you. That
You're
was
welcome.
very helpful.
Thank you. Senator McPhedran, followed by Senator Bury.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of you for coming in person for this conversation. I just actually want to pick up on the general point made by Senator Hay and ask you specifically, what is the strategy, what is the approach to reaching remote and rural communities, and in particular communities where a majority of those in the community are of Indigenous origin?
Thank you for that question. As I had mentioned earlier, both Indigenous Services Canada as well as Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada have the responsibility for national school food programming. The funding flows to Indigenous governments through existing agreements, so to First Nations on reserve, as well as to modern treaty and self-government agreement holders. We do have bilateral agreements, of course, with the 3 territories where we do see high populations of Indigenous children who are attending public schools there. And of course, the provinces and territories abide by the policy and objectives of the National School Food Policy, which talks about children being able to access programs through a stigma and barrier-free environment, which includes remote communities, and some of school food programming can go to accessing or creating programs in those communities where they currently don't exist.
In what ways does this bill help you with fulfilling your mission?
I think what it does is it sets out and cements that long-term vision that the Government of Canada has around access for all children to nutritious meals at school. It also sets out a funding commitment from the Government of Canada for the implementation and ongoing maintenance of the program, and further supports the collaboration of the federal government with provincial, territorial, and with Indigenous partners to expand and enhance programming across the country.
Any more time?
1 minute and 40 seconds.
Lovely, thank you. So for the fulfillment of your mission, can you please tell us about your quality control, your follow-up, your checking? Are hungry children actually receiving the food they need through this program?
So part of the bilateral agreements that we've signed with provinces and territories includes annual reporting. Provinces are expected to report on activities, expenditures, anticipated results, and common indicators which they set targets for. We just finished signing the last of the agreements in March, so the program hasn't been in place that long. That was the end of last fiscal year, so this will be the first full fiscal year where we look forward to getting some data that will help us tell that story.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bury, followed by Senator Mowgli.
Well, thank you all for being here. I'm excited to see you again, Ms. Thorne. We have to stop meeting in committee meetings, but it's great always to see you, and I applaud the government for making this program permanent. So I was reading the National School Food Program Act, and I noticed that the section on funding, I think that's 5, only specifies that federal investments must be guided by the principles outlined in paragraph 5B. Why not also include paragraph 5A, which emphasizes strengthening connections with local food systems, the environment, and culture, especially given the new Buy Canada policy announced by the Prime Minister, under which the Government of Canada will implement measures requiring local content in federal procurement to ensure Canadian businesses and agricultural workers benefit from federal funding. I understand the jurisdictional issues, but I was surprised to see that the 5B wasn't included as part of the parameters, and I'll allow you the time to answer.
So can you just repeat the question quickly for me?
Yes, so the funding part of it
Yeah.
only refers to that the only specifies that federal investments must be guided by the principles outlined in 5B. And in 5B, that's the accessibility, health promotion, inclusivity, flexibility, sustainability, and accountability be measured and evaluated over time. That's the Senator McFedrin's. But I'm wondering why 5A was not included in the funding, because that goes to the heart of the circular Canadian economy and strengthening the Buy Canada policy, especially for local procurement of food. So that's why 5B. I'm just curious as to why it wasn't included.
So in terms of strengthening connections with local food systems, that would be covered under the flexibility principle in 5B, which are one of the 6 principles of the National School Food Policy. So funding can be used towards local school food systems. Is that your question?
But why did you not specify it? You just said only for 5A. I'm just wondering if this is a way not to fund, prescriptively more local food production or agriculture in local.
Don't believe that was the intent. Misha, anything to add?
No, that would not have been the intent. Like Jackie mentioned, the principles
Flexibility,
listed
yes, I see
are
that.
exactly. They're built into the principles, and those are the principles of the policy of
So
the
then
National School Food
5A
Policy.
is contained in 5B is what you're saying to me.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Senator Mowgli, followed by Senator Petitclerc.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nice to see you again, Ms. Thorne. My question is for you. I just want to build a little bit on the data piece. As you know, at our Agriculture and Forestry Committee, we're doing a study on food security. Officials from Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada were pretty candid about the weaknesses in our food security data, including gaps in sampling, regional details, timeliness, and some serious problems with coordination of data. Very supportive of the program, happy to see long-term funding. I'm wondering whether the agreements with the provinces, territories, Indigenous governing bodies have been tied to any common outcome measurements. So I'm wondering, is there an evaluation framework built that the provinces and territories and Indigenous governing bodies have agreed to? If so, what is it?
So I can only speak for the provinces and territories because the other funding agreements are at Indigenous Services and Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs. So part of our reporting is that provinces and territories provide us some common indicators on number of children. So the first year of the program, we asked for the number of children. So that was the baseline. So we knew how many kids there were in a particular jurisdiction. And then we asked them to provide us with programs and number of children accessing programs by program type. So that will give us an idea year over year whether the number grows and how those programs are evolving.
I'm wondering about outcome measures. Are children getting healthier? Are they doing better in school? Have there been any requirements built into a framework where the programs must provide data related to outcomes?
Those are the common indicators that we have. Yeah. We are doing, and I think I had mentioned last time that we were doing some work with CIHR on collecting data through research grants on priority topics for data and researchers. We know that through the online survey that we did in January and February that I mentioned earlier, that there was a consensus that there was a general lack of data in the school food space and in a bunch of areas. So that is something that we look forward to learning more about once we get some of that research completed by those researchers. We've also included some questions in the Canadian Income Survey, and we are also working with FAC, Queen's University, Brock University, who's collaborating with the WHO on another survey that will collect some information around child healthy well-being.
So just to be clear, there's no requirement with the groups that have been funded that they provide outcome measure information.
No, just the indicators that I had mentioned.
Senator Pettigrew, if I can, just to seek further clarification on this point. So I'm hearing that there are going to be different groups being responsible for collecting their own indicators. And I'm wondering if, as a program, you have a mechanism to review outcomes, success, performance, collectively in one place by one group.
Yes, we actually have evaluation within our own department as well, and that is like a typical evaluation that you would see during a program cycle. So we will be undertaking evaluation as well, and provinces and territories are also encouraged to share any kind of evaluation findings that they may undertake themselves.
So this is a voluntary sharing.
There is some wording in the bilateral agreements, which are all public and published online, that speaks to sharing of evaluation findings. I can present or provide something in writing to that effect if you like to provide some more detail. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, Senator Pettigrew. My
Yeah.
apologies.
Merci, Madame la Présidente, merci. Et merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your answers. I'll ask my question in French. Looking at the National School Food Program, what we see in this new legislation is that there are various international commitments. Of course, you have the Human Rights Convention, Call for Action from the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, Official Languages Act. We don't see any direct reference to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. This is my question. Will these new proposals clearly take into account the very specific needs of children and people living with disabilities? I'm asking this question because looking at the current reality, when we are talking about young children with disabilities in schools who have specific needs, it could have to do with equipment, even the food that they eat. It's the families that are currently responsible for all that. The responsibility rests with the families. Hence my question. Through this program, does the legislation provide for taking into account the specific needs of children living with disabilities?
Thank you for the question. There is no specific reference to taking into account the needs for children with disabilities. However, the bilateral agreements are guided by the National School Food Policy, one of which is accessibility for children to be able to access programming in a barrier-free environment. Anything else? No, I think that's it. But thank you.
There's nothing explicit. Like, I'm trying to really understand like the mechanism and the structure. So if there's like the funding goes to a group and then it goes to a school, but they don't have to actually make it.
So that's actually, thank you for your question. So in terms of how the funding works, so ESDC, we do not have direct relationships with providers, school boards, school districts. We don't have those relationships on the ground. Respecting the jurisdiction of provinces and territories, we are a funder. So we provide funding to provinces and territories. They then work with their school districts, their school board, their education body, who then have the autonomy in most cases to make decisions about where the highest needs are. So ESDC as a department does not or are not involved in those direct decisions. That rests with provinces and territories and their education partners.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Senator Senior, followed by Senator Arnold.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I don't want to leave Mr. Wallace out, so I do have a question for him. But maybe I can just ask of you, Ms. Thorne, in terms of, you may have said this and I missed it, but how often will this legislation be reviewed? And would there be an opportunity to make adjustments, amendments similar to what Senator Petitclerc is referring to?
I don't have the answer to that question. Do you know, Nisha?
No.
You could provide that.
Why don't we provide that in writing? Yeah,
That
thank
would be
you.
great. Thank you.
And to Ms. Thorne, thank you. I'm so happy. There is so much anticipation. I've been on the ground with those Rotary clubs and Kiwanis clubs and making lunches and breakfast for kids in, inner city schools, and it makes a difference. It really does in a lot of kids' lives. You mentioned stigma and barrier-free programs. Is that part of, is that a parameter that you're putting on this?
That's one of the 6 principles in the National School Food Policy, and that guides the National School Food Program and the bilateral agreements that we have with provinces and territories.
So what does that look like?
For example, any child is able to go and grab a snack off a snack table if that's the way it's set up. There's no stigma associated with it. So some schools, what they have, for example, is a pay what you can lunch program, if I can just use that. Envelopes are given to kids to bring home, and then they bring them back to the teacher, and whether there's a donation for the cost of the meal or whether it's empty. And it's in an envelope sealed, so nobody has any idea who's accessing lunch and who's paying and who's not.
And since this is permanent, and you mentioned that we were the only non-G7 country that had a program like this, is the goal to get to it being just universally acceptable that kids eat their lunches and their breakfast at school?
I think that's a long-term goal. Yes, it's going to take a while to get there. All provinces and territories are at a different starting point. Some are providing breakfasts and snacks. Some are providing hot breakfasts 2 days a week, cold breakfast the rest of the days. Some provide lunches, some don't. Some it's different wherever you go. And I think having some kind of a national program with coordination will be able to tell that story. Right now we just don't have the data, and like I said, we're in a very nascent stage, so we're just trying to move that needle little bit by little bit.
Awesome. Thank you.
Senator Kuznev?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The funding, and I appreciate the commitment to the long-term funding as well, but it'll be $200 million annually commencing 2029. What's the rationale for the 4-year delay on that level of commitment?
Current programming is for 5 years, so that will take us until that particular point, and then
okay, so that's in place.
It would
for
be
5 years.
ongoing funding after that.
Okay,
yes.
so yeah, that would be ongoing. Okay.
I might be quick. I just want to get back to outcome measures, if I may, Ms. Thorne. And you talked about reducing stigma. That was a dialogue here. And with kindness, it was about students bringing in an envelope and they'd be sealed. I just feel, I'm just channeling if I was that young person who had the empty sealed envelope. So that in itself, I found uncomfortable for a young person and their mental health and well-being. But I do want to hone in on outcome measures. I think that's an important thing here. How do we know that we've reduced stigma? And as Senator Moogly says, how do we know their marks are going to be better? How is their well-being? How is their mental health? The second thing, though, I really want to ask about is the accountability on the spend of dollars. And I know you're a funder, but a funder should also ask for accountability from the provinces and territories on how they spend. Does it actually get spent? And how do you know they're spending it to buy a refrigerator so a community in Sioux Lookout can store their milk and yogurt?
No, thank you for that. And as I had mentioned earlier, provinces and territories are required to give us annual reporting, which also includes audited financial statements, so we can see where the investments were.
So when you say you're a funder, you're just a funder, so the review of the program isn't, I think that was a question that was asked, when is it reviewed, or, and you had said you were a funder, so you don't necessarily review the program, but I guess what I'm hearing is that's different than the accountability from the provinces and territories.
Yeah, I think the question, if I'm not mistaken, was around review of legislation, right?
Yes.
But yes, we are responsible for the review of annual reports and audited financial statements, and when approved, that triggers payment.
From
If
each
there's-
province
exactly.
and territory. Thank you for
Yep,
that. I
you're
appreciate it.
welcome. To your questions around how do we look at need and expenses for need. So part of the bilateral agreement that we have with each province and territory stipulates that they must provide 2 action plans. We have a current 3-year agreement. So year 1, they gave us an action plan, and for years 2 and 3, they're required to give us action plans as well. So the action plan outlines an overview of school food programming that currently exists in a particular jurisdiction. It also outlines what those activities are going to be or intended for. They also speak to planned expenditures, expected results, and how they are going to implement that with the funding that is provided. And as I think I mentioned earlier, there's a section of the action plan which includes collaboration with Indigenous partners as well as official language minority communities. And I know from having discussions with provinces and territories that they also consult and engage heavily with their school districts, education bodies, et cetera.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. I'm going to ask Ms. Thorne so that I don't run out of time, but if you could find that, it would be good to give us that, the analysis. Again, I just wanted to applaud this program. I know it's baby steps and we're just keeping on going. So I think the program stated that it was targeting at least 400,000 students. Can you give us any information? I know it's new. Is that the answer?
Very new.
Okay,
So,
as
I think I had mentioned earlier, we, so provinces and territories are required to give us annual reporting. Those annual reports, we're starting to receive those now, and that will continue into the new year. So any that we have or any analysis is not complete yet.
Do I have a little more time?
You have 1 minute.
Okay, so that reporting is coming. What do you project to be sort of the number of students that you'll add each year?
So where the program aims to reach up to 400,000 kids. Of course, that may be different. Like we say, it aims to reach up to 400,000. It depends. That number was based on the cost of a breakfast. If all kids got a breakfast in, say, like the first year of the program, we know that provinces and territories have the flexibility to be able to determine the needs in their jurisdictions and their communities. So some may provide breakfast, while others may provide lunch. Depending on what the food offerings are, those costs could be a little bit higher. So those numbers may fluctuate in terms of reach. But the aim is up to 400,000, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a very quick question. I understand you're getting reporting from institutions and provinces. Are you taking reports from families, from the people who receive the food programs? Because what the standards across this country about what are nutritional foods, what is offered can be quite different. Are we trying to understand from the perspective of the child and the family that's receiving this help, the adequacy of what is being offered.
We are not getting feedback directly from families, certainly not to the federal government, but we are doing some work in the area of data and research and looking at what some of those gaps are. And as I said, that work is kind of very new as well. So I'm hoping over the next year, 2 years, we'll be able to have or be able to tell a better story of what some of those gaps and challenges are, and then we can identify some of those priority areas for the future of the program.
I'm hoping that I got it right because I don't want to speak out of turn, but I did think I heard you say that you will be asking for feedback from territories, from indigenous communities, governments, to participate in, to add into your evaluation of the program. But this will be voluntary.
So what I had alluded to was that in the bilateral agreements, which are all public and online, and you can read about the action plans as well, we also say that they can also provide us with any evaluation or studies that they do themselves as well. But yes, you're right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Senators, this brings us to the end of this. Oh, there is one thing that I need to say because we've had a lot of offers for information. We are planning to try and wrap this study up tomorrow. So I'm asking Ms. Thorne and Mr. Wallace, out of your kindness and largeness of heart, if you could share with us the information you have promised by end of day, early tomorrow morning, please.
I think we can do that.
And this brings us to the end of this meeting. I'd like to thank both of you for your time and for being with us today.